The first thing I noticed when I stepped out of the Uber wasn't the cold air or the familiar crack of the driveway gravel under my heels. It was the empty space, where my Porsche should have been, gleaming midnight blue, parked like a crown jewel. There was nothing but oil stains and silence. My chest tightened out. I had left that car here less than 3 weeks ago, before boarding a flight to Paris to close what would become the biggest contract of my career. A $12 million deal. The kind of number that still feels unreal when you say it out loud. The Uber pulled away. My suitcase leaned heavy against my leg. I stood there, frozen, staring at the absence of my car like it was a body gone missing, and then my phone buzzed. A message from my mother: "Don't be shocked when you get home. We had to make a decision." My pulse hammered in my ears. A decision? What decision? I didn't even move for a full minute, rereading the text under the gray September sky until the words blurred. Finally, I yanked my suitcase over the curb and stormed up the porch steps. The door creaked open before I even touched the handle. The smell of brewed coffee and toasted bread drifted out. And there she was. My mother. Sitting at the kitchen table like a queen at her throne, steam curling around her mug. Calm. Too calm. Behind her, leaning against the counter, was my sister, Rebecca. Perfect Rebecca. Her honey blonde hair was pulled into a sleek bun, diamond studs catching the light. She wore a new cream-colored blazer, the kind that costs more than most people's rent, and in her hand, dangling loosely between manicured fingers, was a key fob. My key fob. I didn't even realize I had spoken until the sound left my throat, low and ragged. "Where's my car?" Mom didn't flinch. She just lifted her mug, blew on the coffee, and said the words that would crack something inside me forever. "We pawned it." Rebecca needed startup capital for her boutique. "You'll understand, you're doing so well, honey." She needed it more. Every word hit like a slap. Pawned. Needed. She needed it more. My car wasn't just metal and paint. It was the first thing I ever bought outright after years of climbing out of debt, working 16-hour days while Rebecca was out at bars or finding herself on my parents' dime. That Porsche was proof. Proof that I wasn't invisible. Proof that I had built something no one could take away from me, and yet, here we were. They had taken it anyway. I swallowed hard, heat burning behind my eyes. My name is Danielle Carter. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been treated like a stranger in your own family? Like every hour of your struggle was just background noise to their favoritism? Have you ever realized, in one single moment, that no matter what you give, it will never be enough, because they only see you as a resource, not as a daughter? Rebecca smirked, lifting the fob like a trophy. "Relax, Danny. You'll buy another one. You always do." I stared at her. Really stared. She had never paid her own phone bill. She had never once been late night typing contracts with her eyes bleeding from exhaustion. She had never clawed her way up boardrooms filled with men who looked straight through her. She was the chosen one. The golden child. And she knew it. I turned back to my mother. Her eyes didn't meet mine. She just stirred her coffee, spoon clinking against porcelain. The sound was deafening. All the flights, all the negotiations, all the nights I bled into my work, none of it mattered. Because to her, I was simply the one who could afford to lose. I wanted to scream. But instead, I walked to the window. The driveway yawned back at me, empty. The ache in my chest spread like fire, and I whispered 6 words that tasted like blood and steel. "This is the last time, Mom." The air shifted. Mom froze mid-stir. Rebecca's smirk flickered. They didn't know what I meant. They thought I was bluffing. That I would do what I always did, swallow the hurt, go back to work, and let them take again. But something inside me had split clean open. This was not about a car anymore. It was about a lifetime of being used, dismissed, erased. The Porsche was the final straw, and though I said nothing more, in that silence I made a vow: they would never steal from me again. What they didn't know, standing there with their coffee and their smug smiles, was that by taking that car, they had ignited a storm they weren't ready to weather. A storm with my name written all over it. I didn't sleep that night. The house was too quiet, yet every corner screamed. I lay in my old bedroom, the one with the faded posters still tacked to the walls like my teenage ghost had never left. The mattress sagged, the sheets smelled faintly of mothballs, and yet none of that was what kept me awake. It was the sound of Rebecca laughing downstairs. The sound of my parents laughing with her. Every burst of laughter sliced into me like a blade. They had stripped me, humiliated me, and they were celebrating. At 3 in the morning, I finally sat up, the moonlight spilling across my suitcase. My laptop hummed alive when I opened it. A contract draft blinked back at me. $12 million, ink still drying. On paper, I was power. Out there in the world, I was untouchable, but in this house, I was nothing. Just a wallet with a pulse. By sunrise, I was dressed in black slacks and a blouse, sharp enough to cut through the air. Downstairs, Rebecca was sprawled across the couch, scrolling through her phone, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. My mother was frying bacon. My father, silent as always, was hidden behind a newspaper. I stood there, waiting. No one looked up, so I broke the silence. Where's the paperwork? Rebecca glanced up. What paperwork? For my car. My voice didn't shake. You said you pawned it. Which means there's paperwork. Where is it? Mom flipped a strip of bacon. With a spatula. It's handled, Danielle. Don't make this harder than it is. Your sister needed the money. She's starting something real, something we can all be proud of. Something we can all be proud of. The words made bile crawl up my throat. Rebecca stretched like a cat, smug and effortless. Honestly, Danny, you should be happy for me. The shop's going to be amazing. I'll even give you a discount. I laughed then. A sharp, hollow sound. A discount. On my own card I could have screamed, but instead I walked to the table, planted my palms flat on the wood, and stared at my father. Did you agree to this? He lowered the newspaper, finally. His eyes didn't meet mine. It was your mother's call. Don't start a war over a car. Family is more important than things. My jaw locked. Family. That word didn't mean the same thing to them as it did to me. To them, family was just another word for sacrifice. Mine, never theirs. I wanted to throw the table across the room. Instead, I straightened my blouse, grabbed my keys to the rental car I'd picked up from the airport, and said nothing. Silence, I realized, was louder than fury, but silence didn't mean surrender. The next week was torture. Rebecca pranced around the house showing off mood boards and Pinterest photos for her boutique. She'd lean over my shoulder at breakfast, thrusting her phone in my face. Look at this storefront. Can't you just see my name up there in gold letters? I'd sip my coffee without looking. Whose name? Rebecca Carter, she'd say proudly. Obviously. Meanwhile, my mother hovered like Rebecca's personal assistant, taking calls from realtors, reviewing rental spaces, even offering to cash in a CD for extra funding. Every move screamed favoritism, louder than it ever had before, and me? I was the ghost again. The one they didn't see until they needed something, but ghosts see everything. And I was watching. On the fifth day, Rebecca burst through the door holding a glossy binder. I got approved for the lease, she squealed. And guess what? They loved that I already had capital to show up front. She dangled the binder. Like it was a trophy. Mom rushed to her, hugging her so tight I thought she'd snap her ribs. This is it, baby. You're finally proving everyone wrong. Proving everyone wrong. Another knife twisted into my gut. Rebecca's eyes flicked to me. Oh, don't look so bitter, Danny. You've had your wins. It's my turn. My turn. The words rang in my head long after she disappeared upstairs to call her friends. My mother trailed behind her like a shadow, praising, always praising. I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the same coffee mug I'd held the morning they told me my car was gone. My reflection warped in the dark liquid. That was when the idea first sparked. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was strategy, because if Rebecca thought this was her turn, she had no idea the kind of game I was capable of playing. I wasn't going to scream or beg. I wasn't going to demand they undo it. No, I was going to let her climb. Let her think she had won. Let her believe the world was finally handing her a crown, and then, when she was standing at the very top, I would take everything away. That night, I drove the rental car into the city. Parked in front of her new boutique space. It was small, tucked between a vegan cafe and a nail salon, but it had potential. The kind of potential Rebecca didn't deserve. I stood across the street, arms crossed, watching the dark windows. I could almost hear her voice echoing inside, boasting about how she would be the next big designer, how she would make the family proud. My lips curled into the faintest smile. Let her dream. Let her build. Because the higher she rose, the harder. The fall would break her, and I would be the one to push. I drove away into the night, headlights cutting through the dark like blades. For the first time since I saw that empty driveway, I felt something other than rage. I felt power. The storm inside me was no longer silent. It was forming, gathering speed, preparing to tear through everything in its path. And Rebecca? The city glittered around me, but all I could feel was the burn in my chest. The kind of burn that doesn't fade with time. I parked in front of my apartment downtown, a penthouse with glass walls and a view of the skyline. My sanctuary. The place I built alone, with no one's help but my own. I sank into the leather couch, kicked off my heels, and stared at the ceiling. For days, I had stewed in silence. Watching Rebecca gloat. Watching my parents orbit around her like satellites. But now, I couldn't just stew. I needed to act. I opened my laptop, pulling up the deal I had just closed. $12 million. A number my parents couldn't even begin to imagine. I had resources. I had connections. And most importantly, I had patience. Revenge wasn't rage. Rage was messy, loud, sloppy. Revenge was quiet. Cold. Surgical.so I started mapping. Step 1 was information. I knew Rebecca, she had never managed anything bigger than a dorm party. She thought running a boutique was about pretty clothes and champagne openings. She had no idea what inventory management looked like, or payroll taxes, or overhead costs. That bleed you dry before you even breathe.so I dug. Her boutique was registered under her name, Rebecca Carter, LLC. The paperwork had just gone through. She'd signed a 5-year lease with a steep penalty clause. $10,000 down, non-refundable. Amateur move of the building owner, a man named Victor Chen, was listed on the lease. I knew that name. He was a developer I'd crossed paths with at a conference in Chicago. Ruthless, meticulous, allergic to nonsense, interesting. I made a note in my phone. Victor, reach out later. Step 2 was observation. The following week, I dropped by the boutique during one of Rebecca's workdays. She had no idea I was coming. I parked across the street and watched through the windows as she directed 2 painters. Rebecca wore high-waisted jeans and a silk blouse, her hair loose around her shoulders, sunglasses perched on her head. She pointed dramatically at the wall, instructing the men to paint it blush pink. She even made them repaint a section 3 times because it wasn't the right shade of feminine chic. I almost laughed. Inside, bolts of fabric were piled against the floor. Shopping bags stuffed with overpriced candles and vases. She was decorating, not building. I waited until the painters stepped outside for a smoke break before slipping through the open door. Danny. She squealed. What do you think? I scanned the chaos. Looks expensive. She grinned. It's going to be iconic. I'm ordering racks from Italy. Real marble counters. A custom neon sign with my name on it. Rebecca Carter Boutique. Doesn't it sound perfect? I tilted my head. And how's the budget? She waved her hand like swatting a fly. Handled. Mom's helping. Dad too. Plus the car money. My stomach clenched. My car. My money, but I smiled, a sharp little smile. Good luck, Rebecca. And I walked out, leaving her in the paint fumes and delusion. That night, I called Victor Chen. Danielle Carter, he said immediately when he picked up. Didn't expect to hear from you. Victor, I replied smoothly. We should catch up. I see you've leased property on Lexington recently. I know the tenant. His voice sharpened. Rebecca Carter? You're related? Unfortunately. He chuckled. Then you know she's green. Already late on one invoice. But she paid the deposit. Late already. Figures, keep me posted, I said. If she misses another payment, I want to be the first call you make. Victor paused. What's in it for you? Let's just say, I murmured, family business. The next weeks blurred into a theater of arrogance. Rebecca hosted preview nights in the half-finished boutique, serving champagne to her influencer friends while unfinished shelves sagged in the background. She posed for photos in front of the blush pink wall, hashtags like #girlboss and #dreambig plastered across her Instagram stories. My parents were there for every single one. My mother bustling with trays of appetizers, my father quietly nodding approval in the corner. And me? I watched from the sidelines. I let them think I was indifferent, but behind the curtain, I moved pieces. I called an old contact at the bank. Subtly asked about Rebecca's loan application. Rejected. No collateral. No credit history worth mentioning. I checked suppliers she had tagged on Instagram. Half hadn't been paid yet. One was threatening to cancel her order. The cracks were already there. All I had to do was widen them. Then came the night everything shifted. I had returned to my penthouse after a 12-hour meeting when my phone buzzed. A text from my mother, Rebecca's launch party next Friday. You'll be there, right? It would mean a lot to her. I stared at the message. My jaw tightened. They had pawned my car. They had erased my sacrifice. They had crowned Rebecca with my blood, and now they wanted me to show up, smile for the cameras, and clap like a trained seal while she paraded as the family's shining star. I typed one word back, yes. Because I wasn't going to miss it. Not for the world, not when I already knew her launch would be the beginning of her end. I closed my laptop, leaned back, and let the city lights wash over me. Patience. Precision. The storm was still gathering, but soon, it would strike, and Rebecca would never see it coming. The boutique glowed under strings of fairy lights. Blush pink walls. White marble counters. A giant neon sign buzzing overhead, Rebecca Carter Boutique. Champagne glasses clinked. Pop music thumped softly under the chatter. Influencers in glittering dresses snapped selfies against the dream big backdrop Rebecca had rented for the night, and there she was, Rebecca, center stage. Wearing a silk dress the color of champagne, hair curled into perfect waves, her smile blinding under the flashes of iPhones. Her kingdom. Her moment, and yet, all I saw were the cracks. The shelves were half empty, stocked with clothes that screamed cheap wholesaler rather than couture. The register froze twice before the event even started. The lighting flickered every few minutes, buzzing like a trapped fly, details no one else noticed. But I did, because while everyone else was celebrating Rebecca's rise, I was already plotting her fall. My mother spotted me the moment I walked in. She hurried over, her pearls swinging against her neck. "Danielle, you came. I wasn't sure you would." I kissed her cheek, cool and controlled. "Wouldn't miss it, Mom." Her eyes softened in relief. "This means so much to Rebecca. She's finally proving she's more than just talk. You should be proud of her." Proud. The word burned on my tongue like acid, but I smiled. "Of course." Rebecca strutted toward me minutes later, champagne glass in hand. Well, look. Who decided to show up?" "Congratulations," I said evenly, my eyes scanning the boutique. "Big night." She tilted her head, smirking. "Try not to look so jealous. Not everything has to be about you, Danny." I sipped my drink, unfazed. "Jealous? No. Curious, maybe. You've taken on a lot. It must be overwhelming." Her smirk faltered just slightly. "I can handle it." "I'm sure you can." I let the words hang, sharp as glass. I wasn't here to scream. I wasn't here to fight. I was here to plant seeds. So I mingled. I smiled at the guests. I made small talk with influencers, congratulated Rebecca's friends, and toasted the boutique's bright future. But in between the smiles, I whispered to the supplier who had been waiting 2 months for his invoice. "She's been swamped. I'm sure she'll pay you soon. But it must be stressful, right? Being left in the dark." To the landlord, Victor Chen, who showed up in a sharp suit. "She's lucky you're so patient. New businesses usually stumble with rent. I just hope she can keep up." To the local journalist covering the launch for a lifestyle blog. "She's ambitious. But it's a risky market. Lots of boutiques close in under a year." Each conversation was a drop of poison. Not enough to kill. Not yet. Just enough to make the air taste bitter. By the time I circled back to the bar, I could already see it working. The supplier's smile was tighter. Victor's eyes followed Rebecca with a hint of calculation. The journalist scribbled more aggressively. In her notebook, and Rebecca? She was still floating, oblivious, basking in the light. That was the beauty of it. She had no idea the shadows were already forming. Halfway through the night, the boutique's register froze again. The line of guests waiting to buy scarves and jewelry shifted impatiently. Rebecca fumbled with the touchscreen, cheeks reddening. Under the spotlight. I stepped forward, my voice just loud enough to carry. "Rebecca, did you test the system before tonight?" A ripple of laughter swept through the line. Her face flushed crimson. It's just a glitch," she stammered, but the damage was done. The sheen of perfection cracked. I stepped back. Sipping my drink, my expression unreadable. Later, as the night wound down, I found Rebecca on the balcony outside the boutique. She was alone, leaning against the railing, her smile finally slipping. "You really enjoyed yourself tonight, didn't you?" she said, not looking at me. I joined her, the city lights flickering in the distance. "I enjoyed watching you shine." She snorted. "Don't lie. You want me to fail." I met her eyes then, steady and cold. "I don't want you to fail, Rebecca. I want you to face reality. There's a difference." Her jaw clenched. "You've always hated me." "No," I whispered. "I just stopped protecting you." She blinked, startled. But before she could reply, someone called her name from inside. She straightened, plastered on her smile again, and walked back in, and I stood there, alone on the balcony, my heart steady as stone, because she was right about one thing. I didn't want her to fail. I wanted her to fall. The launch party ended in glitter and exhaustion. Guests trickled out. Empty champagne glasses littered the counters. Rebecca hugged my parents tight, glowing with pride, but as I left, I glanced back at the boutique one last time. The neon sign flickered, buzzing weakly against the night. Rebecca Carter Boutique. A name lit in pink fire. A name already burning itself out, and I knew, soon enough, that light would shatter. 2 weeks after the launch party, the glow was gone. I knew at the moment I pulled up across the street. The boutique's windows, once dressed in glossy displays, looked bare, like someone had forgotten to refill them. The pink walls inside were already scuffed, the marble counters chipped at the edges. Rebecca stood behind the register, her phone pressed to her ear, pacing. Even through the glass, I could see the panic tightening her jaw. I stepped inside. The bell chimed. She jolted, ending her call too quickly. "Danny," she said, forcing a smile. "You here to shop?" I looked around at the empty store. "Doesn't look like you're doing much business." Her cheeks flushed. "It's just the season. People are waiting for the holidays." But her hands twisted the hem of her blouse, What she didn't know was that I'd already seen the numbers. A banker friend had slipped me the details. Rebecca's account was bleeding. Rent overdue. Suppliers unpaid. That $40,000, she thought, would last months had evaporated into overpriced decor and parties, and the Porsche money? Gone. Burned on neon signs and Italian racks. No one noticed. I leaned against the counter. Rebecca, you always dreamed big. But dreams don't pay invoices. She bristled. I don't need your lecture. No, I said softly. You need a lifeline. Her eyes flicked to mine, hopeful, desperate. But I gave her nothing. Just a cool smile and silence. The silence told her everything. I wasn't here to save her. By the end of that week, cracks turned into craters. The first supplier pulled out, demanding payment up front. A delivery truck never showed. An angry voicemail from a fabric wholesaler echoed through the boutique speakers when Rebecca forgot to hang up properly, and then came Victor Chen. I got the call from him late one evening. His voice was clipped. Sharp. Your sister is 30 days behind on rent. If she misses next week's payment, I'm terminating the lease. I sat on my balcony, wine glass in hand, watching the city glitter. Do what you need to do, Victor. Business is business. He chuckled darkly. You really are cold. Not cold, I corrected. Clear. Rebecca, meanwhile, clung to denial. She hosted another sale event with champagne and hashtags, trying to lure customers. But the shelves were emptier than ever. A couple of her influencer friends showed up, took free goodie bags, and left without buying a thing. I stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching her spin in circles. Danny, she hissed at me between fake smiles. Why are you even here? Observation, I said simply. She glared. You love this, don't you? Waiting for me to crash. I tilted my head. Rebecca, you were given everything. And you pawned it all for selfies. You think this is my fault? Her eyes glistened, just for a second, before she blinked it away. That night, Mom called. Danielle, she said urgently. Rebecca's having a rough time. She just needs a little help getting back on her feet. Can't you loan her something? 10, maybe 20,000? You'll get it back. I nearly laughed. Like I got my car back? Silence. Then, the voice I knew too well. The guilt. You've always had more, Danielle. You should share. That's what family does. Family. That word again, hollow and cruel. I closed my eyes, steadying my voice. No, Mom. Not this time. She gasped like I'd struck her. How can you be so selfish? She's your sister. I hung up. My hand shook. Not from doubt, but from the fury of a lifetime's worth of favoritism crystallizing into clarity. Selfish. They had stolen from me, erased me, humiliated me, and I was selfish? No. I was awake. Days later, I drove past the boutique again. A closed until further notice sign hung in the window. Inside, boxes were stacked, racks half empty. Rebecca sat on the floor with her head in her hands. For a moment, I stood outside, watching her through the glass. The golden child dimmed, but this wasn't the end. Not yet, because when I opened the door, the bell chimed again, and Rebecca's head snapped up. Her eyes were swollen, her makeup smudged. Danny, she whispered. Please. I don't know what to do. And I stepped closer, crouched down to her level, and whispered the truth she had never heard in her entire life. You don't know what to do because no one ever made you. Her face crumpled. A sob tore out of her throat. I didn't touch her. Didn't comfort her. I just stood up, my heels clicking against the marble, and left her in the ruins she built herself, because this wasn't pity. This was justice, one layer at a time. But justice, I knew, wasn't finished yet. Rebecca had lost her footing. Now I had to take the ground out from under my parents, too. They had pawned my car. They had chosen her over me. They had called me selfish for not bleeding more now. It was time they felt what it was like to be left empty-handed. The storm wasn't over. It was only shifting, and I was just getting started. It's easy to hate Rebecca. She's reckless, arrogant, spoiled. But she isn't the architect of this destruction. No. That title belongs to my parents. They were the ones who pawned my car. They were the ones who shielded Rebecca her entire life, feeding her delusion that the world would always bend. And when she finally hit the wall, they turned to me, like they always did. The call came on a Sunday morning. I was sipping coffee on my balcony, New York quiet beneath me, when my phone lit up with Mom. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Danielle, she said breathlessly. We need to talk. Her tone wasn't sharp this time. It was trembling. I almost smiled. What's wrong, Mom? It's Rebecca. The boutique is struggling, and Victor Chen is threatening eviction. We can't let that happen, Danielle. Not when she's so close. I swirled my coffee. Close to what? Success. She just needs more time. More support. If you step in now, help with rent, maybe cover a few invoices, she can make it. You're her sister. You should want to see her succeed. The audacity made me laugh. So let me get this straight. You took my car, pawned it, handed her the money, called me selfish when I said no, and now you want me to bail her out again. Silence crackled down the line. Danielle, she said finally, voice tight, family comes first. I leaned back. In my chair, the city wind brushing my hair. Then maybe you should start acting like mine. And I hung up. By Monday, my father called. His voice was steadier, but I caught the edge of desperation. Danielle, don't make your mother beg. Rebecca's in over her head. You know how fragile she is. Fragile? I repeated. She threw a launch party with champagne fountains and marble counters, Dad. She wasn't fragile then. He sighed. She's trying. We raised you both differently. Maybe we were harder on you because we knew you could handle it. That old excuse. I almost choked on it. Harder on me? No. They didn't just expect me to handle it, they expected me to carry them, and I was done carrying. If my parents wanted to play this game, I would show them how it felt to lose. Not just Rebecca, but them too. Step 1. Finances. My parents lived comfortably, thanks mostly to loans I had given them over the years. Mortgage payments. Emergency repairs. College tuition for Rebecca when she flunked out the first time. They had leaned on me so long, they forgot how to stand on their own. So I stopped. When Mom called again asking for $2,000, just until next month, I told her my accounts were tight. A lie, but one she swallowed with a shocked gasp. When Dad hinted about the broken water heater, I shrugged. You'll figure it out. Every time they reached for me, I pulled back. Watching the panic bloom in their voices was like watching a dam crack. Step 2. Exposure. Rebecca had always been their trophy. Our golden girl, Mom would brag. So stylish, so ambitious. But golden girls don't shine under scrutiny. I made a few calls. Quiet ones, the lifestyle journalist who had attended Rebecca's launch. I sent her a discreet package, copies of overdue invoices, supplier complaints, a copy of the eviction notice Victor had already drafted. The article hit 3 days later. Is Rebecca Carter boutique already crumbling? Photos of the empty shelves. Quotes from anonymous insiders about unpaid bills. By dinner that night, Mom was in tears. She's being attacked, she sobbed into the phone. People are vultures. Who would leak those things? I sat in my apartment, glass of wine in hand, staring at the skyline. Maybe the truth just has a way of coming out. Step 3. Confrontation. I drove to their house the next weekend. The driveway still bore the oil stain where my Porsche used to rest. Every time I saw it, rage flared fresh. Mom opened the door, eyes swollen from crying. Dad sat in his recliner, grim and silent. Rebecca wasn't there. Danielle, Mom began, we don't know what's happening. She's falling apart. She's not eating, not sleeping. She needs us. No, I said quietly. She needed to learn. And you needed to let her. You don't understand. Mom snapped, sudden heat in her voice. She's different. She's sensitive. You were always the strong one. I stepped forward, my voice like ice. No, Mom. I was the invisible one. The useful one. The one you bled dry so she could play princess. And now you expect me to fix the mess you all created? No. Her face crumpled. How can you be so cruel? Cruel? I whispered. You pawned my car while I was closing a $12 million deal in Europe. You stole from me, humiliated me, and now you want me to fix it? You don't get to call me cruel. The room went still. My father shifted, finally meeting my eyes. And for once, just once, there was shame there. I left them standing in their silence, but I wasn't finished. The storm I had unleashed on Rebecca had gutted her boutique. Now it was time for my parents to feel the same emptiness. The water heater? Let it break. The mortgage? Let it fall behind. The golden child? Let her drown in the ruins they helped her build, because family, as they reminded me so often, comes first, and maybe, for once, they'd finally learn what it felt like to be the ones abandoned. As I drove away, headlights cutting through the night, I felt something shift inside me. Not guilt. Not regret, freedom. For the first time in my life, I wasn't their safety net. I wasn't their scapegoat. I was the storm, and I hadn't even hit full force yet. The storm inside me no longer whispered. It roared. Rebecca's boutique had collapsed, the journalists circling like vultures over her broken dream. My parents were scrambling, the safety net gone, the bills stacking high. But revenge isn't just about destruction. It's about revelation. I didn't want them just broke. I wanted them exposed. One evening, my phone rang again. Mom's voice cracked through the line. She's suing you, Danielle. Rebecca's talking to a lawyer. She says you sabotaged her business. I almost laughed. Sabotaged? I said slowly. She pawned my car. She drained your savings. And somehow I'm the villain? You don't understand. No, Mom, I cut in, my voice like a blade. For once, you don't. And I hung up. That night, I started gathering everything emails from suppliers Rebecca had stiffed. Screenshots of her champagne-soaked Instagram posts from the night she missed payroll. The loan papers my parents had signed using my name years ago, documents I had quietly kept, never mentioning yes. They thought I'd forgotten about those. When Rebecca's attorney sent a notice of intent, I didn't panic. I packaged the entire file, every lie, every debt, every theft, and slid it across the desk of Victor Chen. He skimmed the first page, and a smile crept across his lips. Thank you, Danielle. This will accelerate things. The eviction went through faster than I expected. Rebecca's boutique doors were padlocked within a week. Her inventory, what little remained, was seized. Suppliers blacklisted her name. She wasn't just ruined. She was radioactive. My parents called voices. Frantic, you have to help her, Danielle. My father shouted. She's your sister. She'll end up with nothing. She started with nothing, I replied coldly. Now she's just back where she belongs. Mom's voice cracked, tears audible. You're destroying her life. No, I whispered. I'm showing her what life actually feels like. But their desperation wasn't just about Rebecca. I knew the truth. They had tied themselves financially to her boutique. Co-signed loans. Borrowed against the house. Bet everything on there. Golden child's dream. So when she fell, they fell with her. The final act began at a family dinner. Mom begged me to come, said we needed to talk like civilized people. Against my better judgment, I went. The table was set, candles flickering. Rebecca sat across from me, gaunt, mascara smudged, her arrogance stripped bare. My parents flanked her, their faces tight with pleading. Dad cleared his throat. Danielle, we know mistakes were made. But we're family. Families stick together. If you could just help us refinance. No, I said. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. How can you be so heartless? I leaned forward, my voice low, steady. Do you remember the day you pawned my car, Mom? You said Rebecca needed it more. That I would understand because I was doing well. Do you remember? She swallowed, eyes flickering. I continued, each word deliberate. I worked 14-hour days. I missed birthdays, holidays, entire years of my life building something from nothing. And when I finally came home with proof of what I'd achieved, you stole from me. You chose her. Again. The silence was suffocating. Rebecca's lip trembled. I didn't ask you to ruin me. I turned my gaze on her. You didn't have to ask. You did it yourself. All I did was move the spotlight so everyone else could finally see who you are. Her face crumpled. I stood, pushing my chair back. You wanted me to save you, I said softly. But saving you was the first mistake I ever made. And I don't make the same mistake twice. Mom reached for me, desperate. Danielle, please. I stepped out of reach. This storm isn't mine anymore. It's yours. And you're going to have to survive it without me. As I walked out of that house, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel sorrow. I felt release. For the first time, the weight was gone. No more rescues. No more sacrifices. The golden child had shattered. The parents who built her pedestal had crumbled, and I was free. But freedom wasn't the end. Poetic justice was still waiting. And I had 6 words left to deliver, the ones that would break them completely. I always knew the storm would end here. Not in courtrooms or boutiques, not in whispers behind closed doors, but in a single confrontation. 6 words heavy enough to shatter everything they thought was unbreakable. It happened 3 weeks after that family dinner. By then, Rebecca's boutique was gone. Eviction papers stapled to the glass door like a scarlet letter. The bank had seized her inventory. Suppliers smeared her across group chats and forums, labeling her a thief in heels. Her so-called friends, the champagne girls she'd partied with, vanished. Social media, once a shrine to her curated glamour, had gone silent. Rebecca Carter had disappeared from the digital world she worshipped, but silence is never empty. It hums with shame. And my parents? They were drowning. The house they boasted about at every barbecue was now under foreclosure review. Their credit destroyed. The water heater unrepaired, the mortgage 3 months behind. Dad had started working odd jobs. Mom sold jewelry at consignment shops. They weren't calling me anymore. Not because they didn't want to, but because they finally understood the calls would go unanswered. And then, Rebecca showed up. I was walking out of my office building, dusk painting the city in shades of steel and gold. When I saw her, she was leaning against the brick wall, arms crossed, thinner than I'd ever seen her. Makeup smudged, hair stringy, jacket hanging loose like it belonged to someone else. Her eyes locked on me. Not arrogant. Not mocking, just hollow. Danielle, she said, her voice breaking. We need to talk. We sat at a cafe around the corner. She didn't order anything, just wrapped her trembling hands around the lukewarm mug of water the waiter brought. I lost everything, she whispered. The boutique, the apartment. Mom and Dad, they're blaming me. They say you're punishing them. Punishing us. I sipped my coffee, steady, silent. She stared at me, desperate. I know I messed up. But I'm your sister. Doesn't that mean anything? That word, sister, it struck me. Because to her, it was a shield. A word she could hide behind, but to me, it was a chain I had finally broken. I leaned in, meeting her hollow eyes. Do you remember the day I came back from Europe? The day Mom told me you needed my car more than I did. Her lips parted, but no sound came. That was the day you stopped being my sister, I said quietly. She flinched as if I had slapped her. Tears welled, spilling down her face, smearing the remnants of her eyeliner. I didn't think it would go this far, she whispered. I thought you'd save me. You always did. And there it was. The confession. The truth naked in the open. She had never seen me as a sister. I was her lifeline. Her ATM. Her invisible scaffolding, and now, stripped of it, she was nothing but rubble. I stood, tossing a few bills on the table. Her eyes widened. Where are you going? I paused, looking down at her one last time. To this broken, begging figure who once twirled my car keys like a crown, and I gave her the 6 words. The words that shattered the pedestal. The words that closed the storm. Not my problem anymore, Rebecca. She crumbled, sobbing into her hands. As I walked out, the city lights flickered alive above me, the streets humming with strangers. And for the first time in years, I felt the night wasn't heavy. It was light. Free, but poetic justice didn't stop with her. 2 months later, the Carter house went on the market, bank-owned foreclosure. The same house where they once hosted Christmas dinners, bragging about Rebecca's talent. Sold off in silence, stripped of warmth, stripped of pride. My parents moved into a cramped rental across town. The lawn overgrown, the porch sagging. The pedestal they had built crumbled into dust. Mom ran into me once at the grocery store. Her eyes flickered with something between shame and longing. She started to speak, but I just walked past. I didn't know her. My ears anymore, and me? I thrived. The Paris deal wasn't the last. New contracts rolled in, bigger than before. My name carried weight in boardrooms. I upgraded my apartment, my car, my life, on my own terms, and every step forward felt like a step away from them. From the pain. From the betrayal. Sometimes, late at night, I replay it all, the empty driveway. The smug twist of Rebecca's smile. Mom's words, she needed it more. They thought they had broken me. But all they did was set me free. Poetic justice isn't always about fire and fury. Sometimes, it's about silence. Sometimes, it's about letting people live with the ruins of what they built. Rebecca lives in those ruins now. My parents, too, and me? I live in the light of everything they said I couldn't be, because in the end, revenge isn't just payback. It's reclamation. It's the moment you finally stop being the one carrying the weight, and you start being the one who walks away. They took my car. But I took back my life.